Right around 2000 to 2005, I sold 17 properties with 52 tenants right into the top of the market and tapped out. And if you watch the movie The Big Short, I lived that. You know how I knew how to do it? I started tracking trends in 1990.
Tim, at 40 years old, you're scuba diving in Belize, and you decide you're not going to list another property ever again. And then you're on the airplane and you write down that you are now an investor. You changed your identity underwater or maybe in the airplane. And then you came back and what happened?
So I took my team and I said, we're going from a real estate selling team to a real estate buying team. We're going to be our own best customer. And at this time I had 2,500 leads in my system. And I changed my script. It was, I want to buy your home. And I had these sources and systems for listing and selling home. By the way, I was a listing agent. That's all I did. I worked at this time 4 days a week, probably 6 hours a day, just concentrating on listing and prospecting and listing and keeping my expenses low. That was my mindset. Then it was, I want to buy a home every month. That's my goal is just to put a home where I net 40 on each home. That's what I'm going towards. I called it the Tim versus Board report. And as I talk about arrogant, it was how Roden Associates Real Estate against Remax, Coldwell Banker. It was, is our company selling every month against our competition? How many new homes are coming on the market? How many sold? How many went expired? How many went pending? And we graphed everything. So I saw from 83 to 90, it went like this. From 90 to 97, it went like this. And this is my area. From 97 to 2005, it went like this. And I just saw how many homes are on the market, how many are selling. Like you could just see it. And in the stock market, they call it a blow off top. Like we were just right at the very top. So the message in that is whether you're selling real estate or buying, whatever you're doing, if you notice, I had key performance indicators. I was tracking trends. I was looking at all this data that was helping me, as Gretzky would say, skate to where the puck's going. You know, it's kind of like when you keep putting your key in a lock and it never fits. And finally, the key went in the lock and I just went, wow, I know this. Just my next incarnation. So
what was it about that though? Like before, like you're 25, you have young kids. Was this just like an oh shit moment of like, I need to do something else? Painting addresses on curbs and working part-time in a grocery store just isn't going to cut it. Like, where did that fire come from to then go into real estate and have so much success that you had?
I think it was being a UFCW grocery clerk and seeing the guys in their 30s and 40s just hating what they did. And I just, it was kind of like
dead end.
Yeah. And I could just see that was a ceiling. And I knew I could sell. Like I started selling door to door, mowing lawn, all the things that we all do. And we're all the same person if you think about it. Everybody that's listening to this can relate to it because we're willing to do extra. And that's the difference, and that's what I saw is I finally found the right vehicle for my talents.
I love sales too. And I always say this, I tell people, especially young people starting out, obviously outsize your income, right? If you can outsize your income initially early on, then that's going to give you money left over to invest, to build passive income, which is, we're all shooting for that, right? And I always say, get into sales, man. Like if you're not a brain surgeon or somebody that can bring a lot of W-2 income, get into sales because real estate and sales seems to be one of the great equalizers of this nation. You can get someone without a college degree, without a high school education, but that has high emotional IQ, or you can learn the skill of selling and you can make a shitload of money.
Travis, that is so spot on. So spot on. And all the young people just starting out and figuring out, what can I do to earn more? Even if you're doing a W-2 and you want to make extra money, Travis has something there. And maybe if you can find a way to, I had right over my desk when I sold real estate, it said, step right up and risk rejection. That's what I was able to do because I didn't mind the word no. I mean, nobody likes it, but I lived for the yes.
Mindset is the first step in my mind to everything. You absolutely have to get you need to think big. You need to think, why not me? You need to think contrarian. You need to think differently than what you're taught in school and college. And I love the fact that you're like a grocery clerk trying to figure out how to pay for diapers, but you're listening to people doing big things. And I think that I would argue that and your sales skills were like integral to your success.
Totally concur. Yeah. And it was kind of like, I would never buy a lottery ticket because I didn't want to win the lottery. I wanted to be self-made. I knew I was going to do it.
Yeah.
I woke up in Belize and I'm scuba diving and I'm a millionaire. And for the first time I stopped and reflected and said, dude, I am so proud of you. What's next? And immediately it said, I never want to list another fucking home. And it was like, whoa, what are you going to do? Well, you flipped that home. You made $35,000. This lady walked into my office and said, I want you to buy my house. Will you do that? And I'd said, well, you can't flip homes in Manteca, California. There's no spread. And then I made that leap. And then on the plane back home, I wrote out, Tim is now an investor. And I wrote out, it was a Tony Robbins outcome, purpose, action. What are you going to do? Where are you going to find your deals? Who's going to help you? And I changed my identity. And I think that's a huge piece of all of this. Lovable loser, grocery clerk, real estate agent, investor. To me, it's all in how you identify yourself. And having the balls to go from a top real estate sales person to just go, I'm done with that. What's next? Well, I'd be lying if I didn't say I got, burnt also. And right now, Warren Buffett said once, when the tide goes out, we see who's swimming naked. And there's been some swimming lately.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm certainly not, I've been susceptible to that just like everybody else because I invest in a lot of other people's, investments. I love Andrew Cushman. I'm in business with him through DAPT, David, Andrew, Pat, and Tim. I'm a principal in that. Besides GoBunus, that's been my number one source. I would say stick with what you know. I lost $100,000 investing with a guy who was a teak farmer in Costa Rica. Got scammed on that. Got scammed on a few that were just out of my ballywhack. I don't know if any of you are invested in Green Coffee Company. That's not in my ballywhack, but I put $50K in that and maybe it'll hit and I'll make 7 times, but, Travis, honestly, I think it's not easy, and it's not easy to find the right operators. I've got a lot of self-storage stuff. There's other GoBros that I've invested in now that we'll see in 1 to 3 years how those go.
On those deals that went south, because I invested with some bad eggs, like I said, and they were in multifamily, so it wasn't too far out. I mean, we do mobile home parks, so it wasn't too far outside of what we're used to. And I went back and I think about how I felt before I signed with those guys, and my gut was screaming at me not to. If you could go back and what was your gut telling you when you were wiring the money in for this coffee investment or maybe this teak farming investment or what, others that might have gone south? Do you ever, because you're good at listening to your inner tuition. I'm wondering if that was the case.
I'm just going to be honest with you. I personally don't do jack now. My son is our COO. He's 41 years old. If my risk tolerance, it used to be a 12. Now it's down to say a 7 or an 8. He used to be a 3. I bought him up to a 5, let's say. So he vets everything we do. So I depend on him a lot, and I depend on Pat Hyben a lot. I mean, I don't want this to sound wrong, but I don't trust myself. I'm not in the trenches paying attention really. So I'm really glad that I have my son that helps me do that. He has way less risk tolerance than I do. It's good to have a Chris/Mitch and everybody who's listening to this, that's a Travis or a Tim, find a Chris or a Mitch. And it's good to have somebody that's the rocket ship and somebody else that's holding on for dear life, trying to keep your feet on the ground. If you have somebody that you feel good about and you guys are rolling together, if you can do that for a long time, I think that's so huge. And I think people give up on things too early, but in partnerships and things that if it's working for you, man, keep it going.